Today we're going to be talking about roving reference. I want to implement a new reference program instead of our traditional reference model. First, we're going to talk about the definition of roving reference. Then we're going to move on to the advantages. We're going to talk briefly about some possible disadvantages. And we're also going to talk about other libraries who've implemented roving reference that it's really worked for. So first things first, we're going to define roving reference. According to Force article in 2009, roving reference is emerging as the preferred term to describe a service where staff, for some or all of the time, leaves a fixed service point to find clients within the library who are seeking assistance, rather than waiting for them to approach the reference or information desk. So basically it's going to the patron, reaching out to them directly. We're not using the desk as a barrier anymore, but we're going beyond that, out onto the floor, out into the staff. So some advantages of roving reference. First, the most obvious one is it's good customer service. It's often patron preferred. People like to have their problems fixed on the spot. So if they're having a problem with a machine, like say the printer, and they can't get it to work, they don't want to wait for the librarian. They don't want to have to go to the librarian at the reference desk and ask for them to go back with them. They just want to be approached. So it's really just the preferred patron method. One quote with Kendall and colleagues actually summarizes this pretty well. They say, often users feel reluctant to approach a reference desk and may be less intimidated asking a question when library employees are providing roving reference. On busy days when there's a line for computers, a librarian can offer quick and easy access to a catalog record via the iPhone or iPod Touch. So it's not so much about the technology Kendall and colleagues talk about, it's more about the fact that they're mentioning patrons are having a hard time going to reference librarians, and this really takes care of that problem because you're going to them and roving reference. Moving on, additional advantages of roving reference. We've already kind of touched on this, but basically it gives patrons the help where they need it most. So you're really initiating more one-on-one contact. You're having more relationships, building more relationships quicker with more people, because not all those people that you're going out to would have come to you at reference desk. You're really meeting more people, and you're talking to more patrons with this way. And it's also a way of kind of getting in their ear and talking about the services that you offer. So not many patrons actually know what kind of services librarians offer, what we have to offer. So this is a way to get in their ears and actually pitch ideas to them and pitch services. Also, it's a way to track reference questions. So we already kind of do this, but because we're going to be going out, we're going to be getting with more people, with more patrons. It's a way to make our future services better. We're going to get more data, we're going to know what they like, know what they want, and we're going to get that information from them and make our library staff better. So it's really a way to get more data on what people actually want. Moving on, I just want to talk briefly about the role of technology in all of this. Roving reference depends heavily on technology. It really started to emerge when Wi-Fi became big and librarians could have access to different technology right at their fingertips, and so they could actually rove and have the answers to questions that patrons needed. Basically, the main thing that technology provides for us is it gives librarians the technology right at their fingertips. So you go up to a patron at a staff and you have an iPad Touch and you have a reference question, you can access OPAC right there and answer that question for them. You don't have to take them back to the reference desk. So it's eliminating that time that isn't really needed. Technology really has provided us with this opportunity, and it's important that we take advantage of it. Also, the types of technology we often use. I just want to go into those a little bit. There are what are called GoPara badges. Those are like little USB devices that can be worn around librarians' necks. Basically, what they do is it's kind of like a walkie-talkie where anyone with one of those badges can communicate with anyone else in the library with one of those, so you can talk to other departments, other security if needed. So it's kind of like a radio set or a walkie-talkie, and that's one type of device that's often used in roving reference programs. There's also the more common ones now, so iPads, iPhones, as mentioned by Kendall and colleagues. There's also tablets, like Android tablets, that are getting pretty popular for this sort of thing. So anything where you can have the OPAC right there in front of you. Also, something I want to mention, it's not really an option for our library. It would be quite expensive, and you definitely need the physical space to do so. But one option that a lot of libraries like is just building more OPAC stations right at the end of staff. So basically, anytime you leave a staff area, there's going to be a computer right there for you. That way librarians don't have to worry about losing the technology. They don't have to worry about devices getting stolen or broken if you're getting to charge them. Because that device is right around the corner. So instead of walking to someone with a tablet, they take them right around the corner of the stack and get that information. So that's an option. Like I said, it would be quite expensive. It's not really an option for our library since we don't have the physical space for it, but many libraries are going to that model. Moving on, I just want to go over some examples of other libraries that have implemented roving reference, but it's really worked for us. One is GCPL out of Ohio. They used a two-pronged approach where patrons were first greeted by circulation desk members, and then they were approached by roving reference librarians, so kind of getting that double contact. I thought that was interesting. There's also Westerville Public Library. They actually got rid of the traditional reference service altogether, and they created what they called these Ask Here stations, so they kind of got rid of the desk and just used roving reference librarians to go around and get that information. Their director actually had a quote that was pretty interesting. They said, he said, traditional library service doesn't work any longer. I don't necessarily agree with that. I think that's a little strong. I do, however, think that there's room for improvement, and that's one of the reasons why I do want to do the roving reference program. I think that it's moving forward and it's something we can improve upon. So the last library I want to mention is King County Library System, KCLS. This library is actually the library I want to base our pilot program after. They have some really good data, they have really good articles online, and I think that their data supports kind of the method of where we want to go with it. So I'm going to go into a little bit of detail about the data that they've provided. They had two different pilot programs. The first one was in 2003, and they only had 4 branches complete the pilot program, and they helped or reached out to over 4,000 patrons during that 3-month time period. Granted, the reference librarians weren't always doing roving reference. It was about 20 minutes out of every hour worked was roving. So with that data, just to give you an idea of some of the numbers, about 35% of those patrons that the roving reference librarians approached said, no thank you, I don't need that help. About 25% said they had a maintenance question, so they were having trouble with a printer or something like that. And about 30% said that they had a normal reference question. So basically that's just to give an idea of the breakdown. If you look at the 2006 data, what's really interesting is the second pilot group was a lot longer. It was about a 2-year span for piloting, but the percentages stayed pretty much the exact same as the first pilot group. That shows that they were tracking their data really well. They have really good categories to split it into, and I think if we adopt that model, we'll be able to compare our data not only to theirs, but we'll know that we're fitting it into a good program that's actually tracking data accurately. Moving on, I just kind of wanted to go over the potential issues and disadvantages of roving reference. First and foremost, technology costs money. I'm proposing we use just about 5 to 10 iPads to start to kind of see how the program works for us and what technology works for us, but it could down the road get more expensive. Also, there's going to be librarian hesitation and discomfort with this. This is not traditional library service. We are changing things up, so people are going to have a problem with it, and it is going to take them time to get used to. It's definitely going to be difficult for the introverts of the librarian world to want to rove, and it's something we're going to have to teach them. There's also going to be some training involved. I don't think that will necessarily be a cost for us, because we can do all the training in-house, but I do think that it's something to take into consideration because someone has to make that training material. Lastly, it's going to be a shift in time management. It's going to take some time for us to get used to planning programs and doing that sort of thing around our roving duties. So basically, just to conclude, what does this all mean? Well, my vision for this fictional library is to initiate a 1-year trial program. Every reference librarian, for 20 minutes out of every hour of their shift, they should be roving. They're going to need to track the data, just like KCLS, into the same categories so we can compare our data to theirs if needed. Their categories were ready reference, machine questions, hands-off, so like I can't help you but this other librarian can, in-depth questions, contact or no help, they didn't need anything, or behavior. So we're going to use those same categories and track our data into those categories and then review the data in monthly meetings. We're going to do it in monthly meetings because that way we'll be able to look at the data early and figure out, are we doing something wrong, are we not tracking right, do we need additional training, and that'll really give us a chance to make sure our program's getting the correct kind of effort that it needs starting off. In summary, roving references works in many other libraries. It gives patrons help where they need it most, and that's important. There's a lot of data to support that this works, and I really think that a one-year trial program will work good for us. We just have to figure out, is this program really right for our community? And that's what we need to remember. Just to kind of wrap up with a quote, the art of roving is to make yourself available to patrons at their point of need, or in the words of one KCLS patron, at their point of peppermint. So it's just keeping in mind that all this is about the patron, and we need to figure out what works best for our office. Are there any questions at all?
What if patrons can't find the roving librarian?
I don't really think that would be an issue in this case because the library is large enough where we're going to have multiple reference desk librarians working at a time. So they won't all be roving during the same 20 minutes of their hour shift. So we'll still have that traditional fixed reference librarian where someone can go back to them if needed. But then we'll also have that one out there roving and tracking data to see if that's something that we want. Now down the road, if we decide to get rid of our traditional reference service, that's something that we'll need to think about, but right now it shouldn't be an issue.
Why do you recommend a one-year trial period?
I based that basically off KCLS. They tried a 3-month one, it went very well when they tried about a 2-year one. So I do think that just picking something in between was a good idea. Also, I think that the first couple of months of this program are going to be kind of hard. The data's not going to be as good because people aren't going to know how to track data. They're not going to know yet what exactly it takes to make the program work. So the first couple of months I'm kind of just planning on it being practice. So I wanted to give us a good chunk of time of getting real consistent data so we're making a good decision if this is something we want to implement for this. Anything else? All right, thank you very much.